I was diagnosed at Christmas, and I think that when you've got children, that's something you'll never forget, being told that you're going to die, thinking that it might be your last, and getting through that initial shock. I started chemo, even though it's palliative. As a mother of an 11-year-old, you'll take every single extra day you've been offered. Immediately after Christmas, I went straight in for some very strong chemo. They give very strong chemos for very aggressive, fast-growing cancers, and that's what I was up against. Words like rare and aggressive, everything that was pretty terrifying at the time. I did the first 2 infusions of 6 in January in 2017, and I was queued up to do the 3rd on the very day. I always say that I was one of the lucky ones that was told that oncology couldn't fix me. I always think it's more difficult for the people that are told that their chemo will give them X percentage of chance of getting out the other end, and I think that's far, far harder. So the decision that I chose to choose quality of life over palliative chemo was pretty straightforward. Before quitting, I was being encouraged to have the 3rd of the 6th, and I took separate advice from a doctor who told me the reason why they were pushing for the 3rd was because that's where the real damage is done on the organs, and that's when your hair truly falls out and everything starts to rapidly head south. So that also helped me to not do it. I had a daughter who I didn't want to see me go through that decline visually and physically. And for what I understood, be pretty crude, dying of cancer naturally is a completely different death to going through the whole treatment. And that was very much an important part of my choice and awareness of facing death. I did that pretty early on. And I think that's really important, to not fear death. Because once you put that behind you, you can focus 100% on healing. All of these choices, bit by bit, I believe supercharged my healing. And what the other really big important thing I did was I left a very difficult marriage when I was told that I was going to die. Everybody thought that I was mad to do that. I was listening to Hay House Radio at the time, which was really supportive in my journey, and I was starting to understand more about how important energy is in my healing. I was 53, and as soon as I'd had the hysterectomy, which led to feeling so much better than I'd felt for years, I thought, wow, that energy to get on the back of the diet, the exercise, and all the other things I knew that was higher currency than anything else that anybody could give me. And so everything that I did was about raising my energy in what I did in the outer world, whether that be diet and exercise, but more importantly, in my inner world, by being aware of the things that drained me and the things that gave me energy, whether that be people, but especially my thoughts. One of the first things that happened, I remember everybody asks, why me? That's one of the first questions we ask the oncologist, isn't it? Why me? How did I get this? What did I have done differently? I'm one of 3 children. We're literally 1, 2, 3 in a row. My brother and sister either side of me were the ones that were smoking, that drank a lot, dabbled in recreational drugs. I was the good girl that never did any of that, that took responsibility, followed the career path over the years. I was the last person in the whole family that would get cancer, or so I thought. That was a really big clue to stop and look at the why me. Because when I look back at my childhood, I realised that I was the sensitive, creative one that did everything to try and control the situation that we were in. Quite a dysfunctional home where there was violence and alcohol. So the way I handled that was very different to my brother and sister, who took a more laid-back approach and numbed it as they got older. Whereas I did the therapy, I worked on it all. But underlying all of that, I still was running ragged with my nervous system within my career, trying to keep everything up in the air, being a really great project manager. Something had to give. And I personally believe that it was being in a stressful marriage constantly every day that was responsible for that weakness that was in my system. I took my marriage vows seriously. It's something that I never thought I'd entertain until I was facing my death. When you grow up in a dysfunctional family, a lot of things become normalised. And I found myself in a relationship where I wasn't being hit, it wasn't violence like that. It's far more subtle, which is harder. But I just knew it comes back to energy, where you place your focus. I knew that I could not stay somewhere where there was constant bickering and arguments, whether it be lack of compatibility or anything else. I don't put the blame anywhere, but I made that really difficult choice, especially with a young child. That made it even trickier. But she was my motivation for needing to survive. I knew that I had to do everything. I left no stone unturned to survive. And it was that simple. So to a lot of people, my decisions look crazy all the way along my journey. And it took me 9 months to become clear. And then suddenly I'm not the crazy one anymore. people start to ask then, what did you do? I had my own business before I was diagnosed, which was about to move into new premises and expand and things. Unfortunately, I hadn't signed the lease on the new building. Everything was in boxes, and so when I was registered at hospice, suddenly there was not going to be any more business, and I let go. And to be frank, that whole year in front of me was a full-time job. Luckily, I had critical life insurance. Well, I had a lot of insurances, which I think self-employed people tend to do, don't we, to cover all eventualities. And I could see that that was a privilege, but I look back now and I realise actually the things that we do that matter the most don't cost a lot of money. Probably if we choose where to put our money, it has to be the nutrition and whatever supplements you can afford. The other things I did spend money on were admittedly some emotional release. I did work with the emotional freedom technique, EFT tapping. I worked with somebody to ensure that I was releasing the bad stuff as I was building up my positive outlook. Because I think lots of people say, you've got to think positive. And it's not that easy. You have to let go of the constant fears that do keep arising, whether it be before each scan, maybe somebody says something to upset you, to process the letting go of emotions, to keep yourself operating from a place whereby the serotonin, dopamine, all the happy hormones that we know boost our immunity. And so when you're sad, you've got to feel sad and let it out so that you can move into a happy place more quickly. That was a very conscious thing that I was doing, ensuring that my immune system was as strong as it could be, not just with the nutrition, but on absolutely every single level that I could. I was 100% focused. I do see how resilient and focused I was at any cost. I was accused of being selfish, and the lioness, the mother, there's no time to die, just came out of me. Nothing was going to get in the way. So yeah, that was my reason for doing it. Maybe if I wasn't a mother, to be perfectly frank, it would have been easier to just believe it and everything was on offer at the wonderful hospice going and just resign myself to the fact. That would have been so much easier. And there's a reason why mothers teach their babies routine. With the routine comes security. And I realised what that gave me every day, that routine, was incredibly comforting. There I found myself living alone in a flat which I referred to as my sanctuary, where I went to heal. Had a space in one of the rooms where it's quite sunny, where I'd sit regularly to just get back in touch with myself, to be in tune. So for me, meditation, prayerful type meditation, which is heart coherence really. So coming back to myself, feeling my body, getting out of my head and just in a stillness was really important. So having a routine in the morning when I got up and stillness, feeling my senses, being aware that I was still breathing. Another day I'm alive, getting really basic in my feelings and not my head and tapping into that all day. I'm aware that surrender was one of the starting points of this, the surrender to something higher than myself. I went to a Church of England school. To pray was quite a natural thing to do. I still struggled with the concept of what the Bible was, but I knew there was something outside of myself that was larger than myself that I did commune with. It's not always easy asking or thinking this straight when you're in shock of being told that it's terminal. You very much have to start trying to get your head around things, and I was really glad that I did ask the oncologist how many extra days would continuing the chemo actually give me. And this is where I'm really grateful that she told me the truth. She said, Julie, I'm sorry, but there's no studies done on women, your age, your height, doing what you're doing to tell you that answer. I said, I'm not asking how many days, or were we talking weeks, months, years? You must give me some indication. And she literally couldn't. And thank God she was honest. It made it easy for me. The truth, in my case, it helped me, it didn't harm me. Anybody can heal. It really isn't rocket science. We're built to heal. Cancer isn't a disease like COVID. Cancer is our body saying, I'm not happy, help me. And when you help it, when you talk to it as a child almost, and you're there for it and you hear it and you give it what it needs, it's beautiful, it's stunning. For me, I didn't fight anything. I went inwards and I loved myself. And I even said to a dear neighbour who I'd meet at church, and when she saw me, she was in tears with the idea she knew I was terminal. And I said, don't worry, I'm going to heal this through love. And I meant it as I looked at her. And she knew what I meant. And that's what I really did. And that sounds corny, what does that mean? But the vibration of love is so high, pure blissful love, starting with yourself, radiating outwards. It's as simple as that. That's what healing is.